Shabbat Shalom, everyone. My name is daughter of Israel, Abel, Arya, and I would like to serve you forever as a priestess starting very soon. It's now time for you to start finding your seats for Sabbath services.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. My name is daughter of Yisrayl, Abel, and I would like to serve you forever as a priestess starting very soon. It's an honor and privilege to introduce the sons and daughters of Yisrael Abel, now entering the sanctuary.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Now that we have your attention, you can be seated. And praise Yahweh for that mic check we had earlier. Okay, what we're going to do is, if I could have my first slide, please. I'm going to be going over these dates again. The 1993, which was the signing and implementation of the 7-year peace treaty. 1993 also was the granting of the patent for the temple design. And also 1993, the Vatican Accord with Israel. And then in 1995, the patent was granted. And we went over those dates where Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated in 1995, and the Jerusalem Embassy Act was also signed into law by Congress in 1995. What we're going to be focusing on is we're going to be focusing on the 7-year peace plan, which in the 2017 calendar, they have an overview of what the peace plan and peace process entailed. And if I could have the slide, please. And if you go to your 2017 calendar, you can go over all of this in great detail. You can use this as your study guide to get yourself up to speed with what's going on with this peace plan. Now, what I wanted to focus on is the peace plan itself. I have a copy of the protocols, and it mentions it briefly, only briefly in these protocols about Jerusalem. And it's Article 5, Paragraph 3, it is understood that these negotiations shall cover remaining issues, including Jerusalem. And it goes on to say the refugees, the settlements, the security arrangements, and every other issue of common interest. But it specifically states Jerusalem, and that's in Article 5 of the protocols of the peace plan. Now, in the second part of the peace plan, this is the principles, the Declaration of Principles on Interim Self-Government Arrangements. This is the actual document that was signed on September 13th, 1993. Now, there are some articles that was added. In Article 5, it states, it is understood that jurisdiction of the Council will cover the West Bank, Gaza Strip territory, except for issues that will be negotiated in the permanent status negotiations, Jerusalem, settlements, military locations, and Israelis. Again, Jerusalem was the first item noted in the article. So this 7-year peace plan includes the status of Jerusalem. Now, we do know that I went over and said that the Pope had meetings with Trump and with the Turkey's president. Now, the meeting with Trump was on it was May 24th, 2017. It was a secret meeting that the Pope had with President Trump, and he stated, I won't forget what you said. He never said what he said. He just told the Pope that he wouldn't forget. Then on 12/6/2017, Trump announced that he was going to move the embassy, the United States Embassy, to Jerusalem, indicating that the United States recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. 2 weeks after that, the Pope and Turkey's president discussed the status of Jerusalem. After President Trump announced that he was going to move the embassy to Jerusalem, the president of Turkey and Pope Francis had discussions on that very issue. Okay, then on May 14th, 2018, the embassy was moved to Jerusalem. That actually set in motion a series of events that leads us up today. The waiver for the Jerusalem Act was continued to be signed because the ambassador did not have a permanent residence in Jerusalem. The last waiver signed by President Trump was on December 6, 2017. 2018. That was the last waiver signed. In May of 2019, Pompeo announced that it is official. There is no longer a waiver of the Jerusalem Act. So the Jerusalem Act has been finalized because the ambassador's residence was actually established in Jerusalem. That was the final thing that kept the waiver from actually being implemented fully. That was in May. The final deadline for the peace plan, the Embassy Act, was June of 2019. And if you get the Prophetic Word magazine from this year, the August one, it actually explains why it is so important that the waiver was not signed, because it ended the first 3.5 years of the peace plan and instigated the last 3.5 years of the 7-year peace plan. You need to pay attention to what's coming out next. You have to pay attention to Turkey. You have to pay attention to how Israel and Turkey are at odds over Jerusalem. You have to pay attention to the Kurds, which have gone to Damascus for help in the Turkey and Syrian war that is going on. And you have to pay attention to the last days. Prophet Pastor Yisrayl HaKahan. And with that, I'll turn it over to the next speaker.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You can be seated. We had a really great feast, did we not? Yes, we did. And we're still feasting on this great last great day. Everyone rejoiced in the knowledge that was brought forth from, and it started like right before the feast, about the thing about the planets that Overseer was talking about, and throughout the feast it just kept continuing and building with all the other sermons that were given. And I really encourage you that when you go back home, when the feast ends, don't forsake all that we've been taught. It's for our spiritual growth and understanding, so we can continue to understand what our job is going to be in the future. Everything that was brought out this feast, you can reflect back on how Yahweh's been giving us information throughout the years, and to get to this point to where we can understand what's being brought out now. So that's something that we've all been rejoicing in. Being in the work, everyone was rejoicing about how Yahweh's making it perfectly clear that this is his only prophesied work on the face of the earth, and what our future job is going to be. We're it. We're doing exactly what we're supposed to do. Yahweh's house is fulfilling each and every prophecy just as Yahweh has planned, and taking out the message to all the earth, to the ends of the earth, like it says in Isaiah. And we're also the only religion that's on the face of the earth, the 4,199 of the gods. We're the only one that's taking Yahweh's way to all the earth. And we know that we're part of this because we're part of Yahweh's great family, and we're here. And let's go to Matthew 24, where it talks about that. Matthew 24:14 is the prophecy that says that on page 752, and this message of the kingdom, the corrected translated says this joyous message of the kingdom will be preached to all the world by the one who bears witness, and we know that's Israel Hawkins from the House of Yahweh at Abel, and then the end will come. But with everything that we've been taught here, we've also been warned and taught that we can throw it all away with just one sinful, wrong choice. And we don't want to do that. One incident of Satan, we can throw it all away, just like how Satan did, or how Eve did in the beginning. And very soon, for anyone who chooses that, and we don't want to be part of that, our end would be the last 3.5 years. That this is our only opportunity that we have, this calling that Yahweh is giving us. He's giving us and revealing to us his plan. This is the only opportunity we'll ever have. If we turn to the tree of righteousness and evil, the mixture that talks about in Genesis 2:9, we'll never have another opportunity. And that's only fair because Yahweh says, like he says in Deuteronomy, he sets before us life and death, blessings and curses. And in these last days, there's no mistaking of what our job is and what we are to do. So still here in Matthew chapter 24, let's read verse 13. But he who endures until the end, the same will be saved. Now, I get that word endure, and let's do that thing where we hold our place there and go to Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 21. And that's on page 949. We see the words that were spoken here in Matthew were spoken of by Yeshua. In verse 21, we see he's our high priest over the house of Yahweh, and having a high priest over the house of Yahweh. Verse 16, we see what he's teaching. This is the covenant that I will renew with them after those days, says Yahweh. I will put my laws into their hearts, and in their minds I will write them. So you can see here in Matthew chapter 24 that this verse 14, this message going out to all the world, we're part of that work right there. We're doing it. This is the house of Yahweh taking the message to all the world, and we're listed as the workers in Yahweh's house. So verse 14, we have the end, then the end will come. We know that's the 1 hour burning. The 1 hour burning that will end sin, the sinful, evil, adulterous generation. So let's go back to Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 25. We see, not forsaking the gathering of ourselves together, as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. So not forsaking, the gathering ourselves together. Here at Yahweh's feast, that's what we just did for 8 days. We gathered ourselves together and we didn't forsake it, and we don't ever want to forsake it because Yahweh's feasts are forever. Okay, so let's go to Isaiah 66, where it shows that Yahweh's feasts are forever. So we have Isaiah 66, verse 22, on page 572. For as the new heavens and the new earth, and we know that new heavens and new earth is spoken of in 2 Kings 3:13. For as the new heavens and the new earth, which I will make, will remain before me, says Yahweh, so will your seed and your name remain. In verse 23, and it will come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, all flesh will come to worship before me, says Yahweh. That's forever, throughout all eternity. It will come to pass. Just like you see that word, it will come to pass, it means it's going to occur, there's no doubt. That's what it says. It will come to pass. Verse 24, and they will go forth and look upon the carcasses of the men who have transgressed against me, for their worm will not die, nor will their fire be quenched, and they will be an abhorrence to all flesh. So, if we're not here where we can keep the weekly Sabbaths at Yahweh's house, guess what? We need to move here. We do, to the city of Israel. And Yahweh is going to make it very possible for all his people to be gathered here, especially if we're making the effort to do so. He's going to make it possible for us to be gathered in the protected place. So let's keep rejoicing because the feast is not done yet. And with this, if y'all please stand and turn over to the next speaker.
Shabbat Shalom, great saints of Yahweh. Please be seated. Today's the last day of feast. Did it go by fast for y'all like it did for me? I see some head shaking. I know. It's like leaving grandma's house. You just get sad, but you know you're going to come back. So the title of my speech, my portion is Hakahad Akkad membership. Did you renew? Now, I would like to go back over what man is. Man, one of the definitions of man was the crown of creation. So I got a printed out paper of the crown of creation and the gematria for it, which is the 1074. Now, the feast started on Yahaqob 15, 2019. So, and this is the day that we were granted permission to wear the purple robes. And if you look over to Genesis 49, verse 11, it speaks about the tetherings of the donkeys to the vine and tethering the donkey's colt to the choicest branch. And I want you to just ponder on that for a moment. The tethering, the binding of the donkey to the vine, and the binding of the donkey's colt to the choicest branch. Because this is going to tie in perfectly with Yahaqob 15, 2019, with the granting of the robes. So if you would write down 380 and the number 2280. Now, 380 is apple of the eye. We can only imagine who was the apple of Yahweh's eye. In Daniel chapter 2, it does say that Yahweh will protect us because we are the apple of his eye. Now, 2280, it means to bind, bind on, bind up, govern, and healer. Tying this in with Genesis 49:11, the tethering of the donkey's colt to the vine and the donkey's colt to the choicest branch. So I also put in the gematria, who binds by law. And the number came out to 828, overseer's date of birth. Overseer is the one that is binding us by law to him through the laws of Yahweh. And who governed by law is also, in the gematria, it comes out to 3163. And I want you to get this because this ties in perfectly. Because at the beginning of the feast, they were emphasizing for us to make sure that we renew our membership of the Hakahad Akkad. And I find this funny because it ties in perfectly with the wearing of the robes and the unity, because Akkad means unity. So who governed by law, the 3163, it means his unity, and it traces back to akkad, which means unitedness, together. So who governed by law, the unitedness, only the laws of Yahweh can bring complete unity to the whole entire world. Do y'all agree? Praise Yahweh. So then I was also thinking about, in Revelations 19:8, it speaks about, we've heard this throughout the entire feast, and it was granted that they should be arrayed in fine linen, clean and white, for the fine linen is the righteousness of the saints, right? Okay, so the great marriage supper. When you put in he is betrothed, the number 828 comes up. Because he's standing on the left hand of Yahweh, while Yeshua is standing on the right. And in a marriage, that's exactly how it's set up. The bride stands on the left hand of the Kohan, the one that's going to unite them together, and Yeshua is standing on the right. Lamb's marriages is 828. Overseer's date of birth, and their virgins cleansed and pure is also 322. 322 is the license tag on the overseer's van, while 1074 is a tag on the Suburban. So let me go back to Genesis 49:11. In the last days, Yahweh will establish his house, set on the perfect laws of Yahweh, tethering his donkey's colt to the choicest branch, according to the standard of perfection, which is sent by Yahweh's laws. So overseer is bringing this complete unity. All right, so in the last 3.5 years, he's going to bring this to completion. We're in the middle of the last 3.5 years, and you're sitting here in your robes, your purple robes, the robes washed in the blood of grapes. These are all prophecies being fulfilled. There is no room left for any doubt. Any doubt. The overseer is the last day's anointed witness. Please, if you are hearing this message, come to the great house of Yahweh, because the time is very, very short. And with this, if you'd all please stand and remember to renew your Hanukkah membership. Now I'd like to turn it over to the next speaker.
Listen, can you hear him calling? Nations in the world are falling into the pit of lies and curses that won't quit. Listen, can you hear him calling? Words of wisdom from the Malach's lips are falling. Can you hear?
Shalom, everyone. Please be seated. Can you hear? Listen, can you hear? Let's turn over to page 821, Yachanan 644. Now, as I read this, I want you to really think about what's being said here. No man can come to me unless the Father who has sent me draws him, and I will establish him as a priest at the last day. I read this over one day, and I read it over, and I read it over, and I said, I need to apologize, because I said one time up here that you don't come to the house of Yahweh, Yahweh draws you. But as I read this over and over, I said, I think I don't understand something. I called the overseer and I said, why do I think that scripture says it's only talking about you being drawn? Because I think it was supposed to mean all of us. He goes, I don't know where you got that from. I'm like, I don't know either, but I want to go over this with you. So, no man can come to me unless the Father who has sent me draws him, one person, and I will establish him, one person, as a priest at the last day. Let's look at a gematria here so we know who we're talking about. The first gematria is anointed for uprightness. You see that 1074, that's the overseer's tag. And then comes the Spirit of Yahweh rests upon him. And we see that's 322. And then who is Yahweh's face to us? Yahweh's face to us. The face of Yahweh is his laws. And the overseer is the laws to us. He's the one that teaches us his laws. And there you see his tag number again, which belongs only to him. So in Yachanan 6:44, no man can come to me unless the Father who has sent me draws him. And I will establish him as a priest at the last day. So that side note, 138, look at that. Everyone look over to the side there at their side note D. It's the number 138, to take for oneself, to prefer, to choose, to expiate sin. And that means to get rid of sin. That goes to 142. And it says, Yahweh raises up so that the branch can be fruitful. The branch, 6:12-13, it says, speak to him and say, this is what Yahweh of hosts says, behold the man whose name is the branch. For he will branch out from this place, and he will build the house of Yahweh. He will build the house of Yahweh, and he will bear glory, and he will sit and rule on his throne, and he will be a priest. Did you see that? That came from Yachanan 6:44. A priest established in these last days. A priest, and upon his throne, and the council of peace will be between Yeshua, our high priest, and the priest that's spoken of in Yachanan 6:44. That would be here in the last days, according to prophecy. According to the prophecy, he would build this great house of Yahweh, where it says in Isaiah 2:2, it will come to pass in the last days that the mountain, the promotion of the house of Yahweh, will be established, has been established in the chief of the nations. And all nations, all congregations will flow to it. So the next gematria, who is chosen? Who is chosen? That's what 138 meant. 138, you see that over there? Then you have 828. It shows you right there, just in those numbers alone, that it's Yahweh's. But then we have all the prophecies that prove who he is. And yes, praise Yahweh that Yahweh gave us no doubt who the last days anointed witness is in these last days. And that 1253 there meant a judicial estimation, a judgment of the worth of character of someone. So who brought us out of Egypt? Just as Moshe brought the people out, we have one that brought us out of Egypt. But also, he didn't just bring us out of Egypt. Let's look at the next one, the next gematria. Who got the God worship out of us so that we could be holy, so that we could come to the point where we're wearing linen granted by Yahweh. And you know, it isn't just bringing out of a physical land, it's bringing us out of our minds so that we can be holy to Yahweh. In the Hebrew, it means also to select, to be pure and bright. And in Yachanan 6:46, let's turn back over to Yachanan 6:46, where it says here, for no one knows the Father except he who is begotten of Yahweh. So who is begotten of Yahweh? 1074. Of course, the overseer is begotten. He was the one that Yahweh drew to build the house of Yahweh. So, and that was at the last day. You see that at the last day? Who would be helping him in that the last day? We had Yeshua, our high priest, it said in Zechariah. But also, let's go over to Hebrews chapter 1, verse 2, 1 and 2. It says, has in these last days spoken to us through his Son. You know, it's the Yeshua who is guiding, protecting, leading, watching over our great overseer. And today is 1021. on the calendar. Yeshua is with your anointed one today and forever. So now, what are we? We are the called out ones, just as 1 Timothy 3:15. But if I am delayed, I write that you may know the right and proper way to conduct yourself in the house of Yahweh, which is the pillar and ground of the truth. So you see that we're the called out ones. There had to be someone that Yahweh drew out of this dark world that would come to here and build the house and call out. Come, come, he says. Learn of the way of Yahweh. He was calling for the last how many years? Now can you hear? Listen, come to the house of Yahweh. One was drawn to call us here. Yahweh bless your understanding. I turn it over to the next speaker.
Shabbat Shalom, please be seated. So we know that 2 billion people are being gathered to the house of Yahweh right now. And so this morning, for my portion, we're just going to go over a few of those areas that are contacting the house of Yahweh that are wanting to be a part of it. Before we get to that, do you remember when Pastor was talking about the Unveiling Satan book that was going for a whole lot of money online? And there's some reviews in that book. We're just going to go over a few of them, what some of the people were writing after they read the book. And so this one says, this book is a must for every believer in Yeshua the Messiah. It exposes the false ideas concerning Satan. Shocking, but biblical proof is offered. The second one, the title says, Deep, Heavy, Awesome. Family and friends alike can attest to the fact that after having read this book, I've changed. The next one, the headline says, Don't read this book. Not unless you're ready to challenge one of the most entrenched beliefs in the history of this modern age. It turns out that Satan is not masculine. Then we have Understanding Things Around You. It says, excellent book. My own personal studies of Revelations and other scriptures were shallow compared to what I've learned reading this book. It's a must read for seekers of truth. Okay, so we're going to go, praise you. So we're going to go over a few of the different, we have a lot of people that write in and contact the house of Yahweh. So there were so many. I'm just going to go through some of them until they tell me that you have to get off now. So the first one, this person wrote in and said, please, Shalom, please, I need a location of Yahweh's house in Tel Aviv. And that's what they said. And so that of course, is in Israel. And then, and please, just if I mispronounce any of these names of these places, please forgive me. I'm going to try to get it right. Receive much love from Kenya Masai Mara Church and our Orphans Children's Home. Thanks for your kind words and wonderful encouraging to our work in Kenya, Africa. Kindly we pray and welcome you to visit Kenya. And Kenya is always writing in and asking us to come there. There's a lot of people there, and they're always sending pictures and what's going on over there. So then this next one, Kwamalanga is a town in it's in South Africa. And it says, hello, Shalom. Please, if it is possible, please send some of the teaching materials. I want to hear the words of Yahweh, and may Yahweh be upon us, and be it so. Now, this next one, I actually have a picture to go with it. They wrote in and says, I am in Uganda, East Africa. I would request to join your ministry with all my ministry. And they sent a picture in. The picture isn't probably going to be as clear. I really should have put a slideshow together. But there's a huge congregation there. And yeah, and so they send these pictures in, and they want to join. So, okay. So then the next one, the person writes in and says, when are you coming to Bolivia? And then they said, we've got, just send your group of people. We have room, we have board, we'll feed you, just come. So then we have one that wrote in and says, they give their name. I'm from Liberia, but I live in Tunisia, and I'm a refugee, hoping for my demand to be granted, which is resettlement and relocation to a safe international country. They've been a refugee for almost 9 years, and they're writing in looking for guidance from our pastor and overseer, what they must do. And these refugees are constantly writing in and updating the House of Yahweh on what their status is and where they're at, where they've been relocated to. So we just really need to pray for them, for the doors to be open, for them to come, because that's all they want to do is to be here at the House of Yahweh, and they're begging constantly. Okay, so this next one, it's from, we believe, Shabbat Shalom. We believe that the House of Yahweh is the only religious organization that brings the complete truth without deception. And they're in the Philippines, and they also sent a picture of some of this isn't everybody. Okay, praise Yahweh. I'm going to have to fly because I want to show some more of these pictures. Let's see. This one is from Burundi. We're a group of believers here in our country, Burundi, who want to join your ministry, and we want to know more about Yahweh and Yeshua. Burundi sits in Central Africa. It's just below Rwanda. Let's see, this other person from the Middle Eastern country that's really strict in that country, so I'm not going to name it, but they were emailing asking how can they help with the House of Yahweh in that specific country. What can they do? This one, I've been watching the House of Yahweh for a while now. However, I've never heard the word of our Creator delivered in such a way that you have to praise Yahweh and believe all that the prophets have spoken. I'm convinced that the House of Yahweh is the chosen place in this last generation. Pray for me and my wife that Yahweh will make us a way for my wife and I to come to the House of Yahweh, repent, and be converted. And then we have, Shalom, I have a question. I'm Catholic, but don't agree with the doctrine. I wanted to know how to become a member of the House of Yahweh. I've been studying Pastor Israel Hawkins, and they say I currently live in India. And here is a picture of India. India has this is just one group in India. They have over 700 members in India, in the House of Yahweh there, and then over 1,000 members in the country Myanmar that borders India that is also a part of that group, and they kind of coordinate with our teachings, and they get together, so it's really nice. All right, so this next one, this group, they're constantly sending pictures in. They're from the Democratic Republic of Congo, or Congo, and I just want to show a few of these pictures before they get me off stage. These I was looking for, they sent a picture in. They were actually having services, another group in Congo in another area, and it was like the pictures, they were in the jungle. Like seriously, they were sitting outside and you could see the jungle all around them, and they're sitting down having services for the House of Yahweh, and they're constantly, I couldn't find that picture, but it was really neat. So those are a few, and then my time is almost up, so I just want to show one more here, and these are our members from Ghana, and Ghana is also sending pictures of their congregation in. We had a group email us last night at 2:46 a.m. their time from Ethiopia. How can I get your message in your books? That was from Ethiopia. So sisters, be encouraged. We may not see these people here, but they are contacting, they're being gathered right now, and they're coming to the house. May Yahweh truly bless you. And I turn it over to the next speaker.
Please be seated. Was that not encouraging? Wow. Now we can see why we're being tested so much to come to perfection, because we have to be ready to accept everyone when they come and have all of our little bugs worked out, right? Okay. So I want to start, if everyone would please turn to Genesis chapter 3. We're going to read verse 1, and it says, Now the serpent system, remember the divining serpent, the divining serpent was more subtle and crafty than any beast of the field which Yahweh had made. And this divining serpent tried to deceive the woman by saying, has Yahweh really said this? So you can see that the Catholic Church, right from the very beginning, they've never changed the way that they do things. They say, has Yahweh really said this? Is this what that man is really saying? Now I'd like for everybody to turn to Matthew 23. Matthew 23, verses 33 and 35 is what I'm going to read here. And Yeshua was correcting them, just the way our pastor corrects the Catholic Church in this time period. And you can just almost see our overseer in Yeshua here. He said, divining serpent, brood of vipers, how will you escape the sentence of Gehenna? So that upon you come all the righteous blood shed upon the whole earth, from the righteous from the blood of the righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, the son of Berechiah, whom you murdered, Catholic Church, whom you murdered between the porch and the altar. Yeshua didn't cut him any slack, right? I want to show you the meaning of the word vadicize. Vatican, vadicize. I want you to see the similarity there. Vadicide, from the Merriam-Webster's dictionary, is the murderer of a prophet. The murderer of a prophet. And this is exactly what they do. This is exactly what this system, these children do. Now, we've been called out of this system. We are children being ready to be adopted by Yahweh. But, when we were in the orphanage, we were out in the world with the children of Satan, right? True? True? We were. And this we're going to make manifest through Pastor's song that he wrote. I want to read verses 1 and 2 of Pastor's song at this time that he just wrote. This is his most recent song. It says, we clearly see the threats, all the threats against all men, women, and children. Now that war, it does not discriminate. War kills everyone, right? But here in the house of Yahweh, what we see is our women, our children, our men, we're being taught to bring and teach peace, right? This is what we are being taught. So the children of Yahweh, we're being taught to be peacemakers, right? Verse 2, you hear them say, get out of my face. And then they say, get off my land. Remember all the immigrants that they're shipping off and putting in all these little prison type things? Get off our land. But see, in the house of Yahweh, we say, come to the house of Yahweh. Come to the city of Israel. Come and you will be taught. You will be taken care of. You'll be given free meals and you'll be taught all the things you need to sustain life eternally. Okay, and then they say, it's not even just get off my land. Then we go over to their land, this beastly system, and we say, get off your own land and give us all your oil, all your things, right? But at the house of Yahweh, we say, do not trespass. Respect those properties. We teach about the peaceful solution. There again, the children of Yahweh are being made manifest. You can see that they're different from the children of the gods, right? You can see it? Okay, verse 3. Verse 3. My bombs will kill. They will kill millions, and my powers I will not hold back. Peace by force. That's how Nimrod rules, right? Peace by force. But the strength and the power that we're learning, the children of Yahweh, Malachi 4, Romans 1, verse 16, is Yahweh's laws. That's our power. That's the strength that we're going to govern by throughout all eternity. That's what the children of Yahweh will use, right? And then it says, I make my bombs more deadly. With my knowledge, there's no lack. There we go. These bombs. But in the house of Yahweh, we use the increase of knowledge to bring people out of sin, to take the sickness and disease away from all people. That's what we use the increase of knowledge for. Verse 4, I will burn a third of the people. Revelation 6 and 9 shows what I will do. A fourth part of the earth I will murder, and then I will come and murder you. Wars, burning. This song is intense. Pastor gets it from the scriptures. So they're going to burn with war, and they're going to leave all these people dead. They don't care if they're women, children. It doesn't matter to them as long as they get what they want, which is everything. It's I, me, myself, right? But the children of the house of Yahweh, we're learning to heal. We're learning to resurrect. That's what we're learning here. Do you see the clear distinction between the children of the gods and the children of Yahweh? Do you see why we had to be tested so severely with the pressures? Yahweh has to see, house of Yahweh, what we're made of. So before the feast and during the feast, the pressure's put upon us to see how we're going to react to one another. What are we going to do? How are we going to react? Because we have to react as a child of Yahweh. As a child of Yahweh. In the bridge, it says the religions have a 1 hour burning. That's their reward. Remember in Psalm 91, it says, you will see with your own eyes the reward of the wicked. We have eternity. They have to look forward to a 1 hour burning. Yes, it's hard to overcome. It's not easy. It's not easy to put ourselves down. It's not easy to humble ourselves. It's not easy to put the other person first. But it's what Yahweh wants. It's what Yahweh needs in each and every one of us in order to be the great children of Yahweh. The chorus. I'm going to jump to the chorus. Learning war no more is the everlasting power, pointing back to the laws of Yahweh. Bringing everlasting days is Yahweh's perfect, peaceful way. Bound with unity, and that's what our tests and trials bring. It brings us closer together. They even said that in the newspaper, right? With our great high priest, Yeshua. And then the last line of the song, the choice is yours to make. Which child will we be in these last great days? Praise Yahweh. And at this time, sisters, I have the great opportunity to turn the services over to the great priest in Yahweh's house.
The name of that song is The Salvation. Remember Isaiah 49, verse 6? Look it up if you don't remember what it is. At this time, we get to hear from the great deacon, Michael Ossip.
Shabbat Shalom, great saints of Yahweh. Please be seated. We're gonna move rapidly here today. Learning war no more is the everlasting power. That's an amazing statement right there. Yahweh shows that he didn't hold anything back from Satan teaching her and showing her all these things. He gave her the best of everything to do the work. She was given these things to do the work, to guard and keep, and she neglected that, and then sin was found in her, and she turned from Yahweh. And then everything in her desires and wants was to destroy Yahweh's work. And Pastor has started a series of sermons about the planet Jupiter, and he's been speaking about Jupiter. And he dropped one of those gold nuggets on us when he brought us the information about what's inside Jupiter. So, of course, this feast, I went home right away and jumped into the codes. And there's some really wonderful things that are going to be presented to the people of Yahweh after this is all said and done. So let's go right into the codes, okay? Well, right here we have the main. And if you remember, Pastor said in his first sermon just recently, he started talking about Jupiter. He said, Jupiter gods. We need to look that up. So that's what I put in the search. And right here, of course, we have Jupiter gods. Okay, Jupiter gods. Then over here, the first word that came up was Vatican. And I'm like, okay, well, they worship the gods and everything. But then I realized, I looked online, and in the Vatican, they have a statue of Jupiter, who they worship. Zeus, Jupiter, Jesus Christ. That's who they worship. Okay, they worship Satan the devil, and they have this big, they call it the Great Statue of Jupiter. Okay, so let's jump back on the codes, and that's in St. Peter's Basilica. Okay, then up here we have atmosphere. Atmosphere. So, you know, pastors talked about it having, the planets having atmospheres inside of them. All right? So atmosphere wasn't the only thing that came up with that. Okay? Right here we have this set of characters and this set of characters on this line. Well, of course, atmosphere, and then Yahweh showed controlled atmosphere. So it has an atmosphere, and it's a controlled atmosphere. Then, right here, we have Hillel. Hillel is right there. All right. Okay, so then 7 and 8, right here, this one and this one right here. Right there and right there is Hillel's seat, or residence. Okay? Hillel's seat or residence. All right, so then we have right here, this line right here of characters. And this one here is a constructed structure. In other words, a formation, framed, building. Well, it's not a building as we would know a structure like this. We know that Yahweh uses the microbes, and there may be some aspects of structuring like this building here, but everything we've learned from Pastor about how Yahweh uses the microbes, I would tend to think that the structure is one made up of microbes doing their job. Okay, so we have, again, right here we have a structure, building, formation, frame, framed. Now this one, this line of characters here and this line of characters here, or letters, that is internal, inward, universe, worlds, cosmos. An entire universe, which, like Pastor said, of worlds and planets and everything inside. Think on that for a while. So again, it says inward or internal universe, worlds, or cosmos. Now, of course, I had to look for this one because of the power that the planet that science has said the planet has put off, and 100 billion kilowatts. Yahweh hides things in there, and He hid this one in abbreviations, like when you see articles. And this is all one word right here. This is 100 billion kilowatts. But it's all in abbreviations, like when you see, for instance, like 100, and then you'll see either a little b with a dot, and that'll represent 100 billion. Kilowatts, of course, the abbreviation is KW. So that's 100 billion kilowatts. Just like Pastor said. Okay, this one here is really neat. Right here. This group of characters. Transparent, crystal clear, liquid. Jupiter's atmosphere has been referred to as a soupy liquid. If you remember when the articles were played about the war in heaven and the attacks on Jupiter, and they talked about the 21 fragments hitting Jupiter's soupy atmosphere. So it's crystal clear and transparent. Remember, Pastor said on the inside, we can't see in, but they can see out. So it's transparent, crystal clear, liquid. All right, okay, then our next one right here is the year 1973. 1973, and I was like, okay, why does that year come up? So I had to Google it and search. It was that year that the Pioneer 10 spacecraft became the first spacecraft to fly past Jupiter. Okay, so that was there. Okay. All right, so then we have right here. Where are we at? I'm lost. Okay, 15. Right here. Inside, and that crosses the first word atmosphere, so it shows again there's an inside atmosphere, and that's those right there, and this is the first word atmosphere that came up. So inside atmosphere. Now this one's really great. I highly recommend you get the sermon, How Satan Influences the Mind. Okay, and those who have heard the sermon, How Satan Influences the Mind. We know that she was able to broadcast to the human mind until the war in heaven. Then that ability was taken from her. So right over here, this word is broadcast or transmitter. So then I was letting the computer search, and the word malfunction came up, and I was like, wow, I wonder if it crosses that. Sure enough, malfunction crosses broadcast transmitter. They may have tried to put it back together, but I don't think they were able to. Yahweh took away her ability to broadcast to the human mind. So the work could move forward and get to where He needed it to be so it could grow and be ready for the 2 billion to come. Okay? Again, I highly recommend the How Satan Influences the Mind. Now the last one, these here, this group, and that group. Again, these characters here, these characters here, these characters here, and these characters here. Are you ready? Given holy women new. Given to the holy women of new, the structure presently called Jupiter. And I asked Pastor about that. After the millennial reign and the 100 years, that's going to become the Holy Women of New's new work area. So it looks like you need to get with Pastor and come up with a new name for it, huh? And that's all I have for today. Given to the Holy Women of New. Praise Yahweh. If you'll all please stand. It's my honor and privilege to turn it over to a great priest in Yahweh's house, the great Kohan Benjamin Krause Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom. Yahweh's peace be with us all and everyone watching abroad. Please be seated. Okay, let's go ahead and bring up the first slide so you can get today's title. We're calling this the City of Yisrayl, the Lamb's Wives. The last time I spoke about the City of Yisrayl, I gave you a letter to be pondering. Can I have my next slide? You notice when Pastor's holding up those palm branches, right? You see what shape he's making? That's right. When you raise holy hands, you lift up holy hands to Yahweh. That's what you're doing. Okay? Now, when you go to 1 Timothy 8:2-8, remember it tells us, he says, I will that men everywhere lift up holy hands to Yahweh. You put in holy hands in 1 Timothy 2:8, and look whose tag number comes up. 322. And the other number, 2407, means to lift up anything on high and exhibit it for all to behold. Now, here's your perfect example, of lifting up holy hands right there in front of you there. And 2407 in the Greek means a priest from 2013, holy. A holy priest. There's a holy priest right there. You won't find those on the 7 hills, okay? You'll only find them right here at the great city of Yisrael. Now, I'm going to show you something that's been under our nose this whole time. Yahweh only reveals things when it's time. Can I have my next slide? It's in Isaiah 2:2. But in the last days it will come to pass that the mountain of the house of Yahweh will be established in the chief of the nations. It will be raised above all congregations, and all peoples will flow to it. The first number, 1886, means 2 wells. The great Kohan that gave the prayer this morning, he talked about 2 wells. One right over there in Abelin, where the first sanctuary is, and now we have another one here that it was established 28 years ago, this feast, right? 2 wells. Strong's Greek 1886 means a farm, a dwelling, a habitation. Remember the habitation of Yahweh, the house of Yahweh. Second number, 1131, means built up. From 1129, to build, builders, set, establish, anointed, build up Israel or Yisrael. Now, notice 1131 in Greek, that should be Greek. It means naked and poorly clothed. Yes, that's how we came. We were not, when we came here, we were a mess, okay? And I'm not saying that by any means that I'm there yet. I know I'm not. I see my shortcomings. But we're, remember that gold video? You remember the gold video where the men were there and they were all came here and they were all ragged out in rags, and by the end of the song they were all gleaming in gold. You remember that? There you go. Just think of that. 1247 is the third number, and it means the son. From 1121, colts, fellows, heirs, builders of the family name. From 1129, to build, builders, set, establish, anointed, build up Israel. 1247 in the Greek means to serve, to minister, to wait tables, administration, deacon, deaconess, contributing, support, a teacher and pastor, to kick up dust. No, you don't remember him kicking up dust behind us that one time when we were all running around? As one running an errand, persecuted, to suffer persecution. And that's what we all must go through here at the house of Yahweh. Remember, through much persecution, we're going to inherit this kingdom. When you add those up, 4264 means a camp, an encampment, tents, stars, sacred courts. From 2583, to encamp, to grow to an end, to rest in tents. From 2603, to show kindness, spare, granted. Granted. And think of this linen that we're being granted here at this feast. Can I have my next slide? Now, what would Isaiah 2:2 be without Micaiah 4:1, right? So let's look at Micaiah 4:1. It will come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the house of Yahweh will be established in the chief of the nations and will be raised above all congregations, and all nations will flow to it. Now, I took the word eventually out because it's actually added there. So let's look what it says. 1837 means judgment. Remember, judgment begins here. Strong's Greek 1837 means to sound forth, sounded out. Remember this trumpeter that's sounding forth throughout this whole world from this great house. The second number, again, there's that number 1122. What a coincidence, right? It means colts, fellows, you know, this company, all your companions here that this world is beholding right now. Fellows, heirs, builders of the family name. I'm going to keep repeating this from 1129. Build, builders, set, establish, anointed, build up Yisrael. 1122 in the Greek means a man learned in the law of Moshe, a teacher, a writer, a recorder. In other words, a witness. From 1121, writings, literature, and here's his name, Bill. From 1125 to record, describe, and write. And the third number, 1215 in this Gematria, it says to be a people gatherer, to address a public assembly. And that's what's taking place now. We're gathering from all the nations at this time. When you add those numbers up in this Micaiah 4:1, it's 4174. Now get this, it means to descend, to come down. 4174 in the Greek tells you what descends and comes down. A community. A city. From 4172, a city descending from Yahweh. Now, where do all your blessings come from? The house of Yahweh. They don't come from anywhere else. Remember Psalm 118:26. You will be blessed out of the house of Yahweh. So when you read about this descending from Yahweh, that's what you need to keep in your mind. It's not like you're going to stand there and, oh, there it is. The kingdom doesn't come with observation. You're sitting in the city of Israel right now. And you've been granted this by Yahweh. Now, when you take all of those meanings that I just gave you, can I have my next slide? And you drop them in Gematria, look what comes out. 4888 means to be anointed and consecrated. From 4886, anoint. 4888 in Greek means to exalt to dignity and company. That means all of us together, even those that died that are sleeping right now. Remember, we're going to be made perfect together, to glorify together. The second number, 2932, means to purchase, marry a wife. Is that what we all are? Wives of Yahshua? 2793 in the Greek. I don't know, I keep putting Hebrew there, I'm sorry. It was a late night. It means all together. All together. Again, you see that? That unity we must come to. Okay, we must come to this unity. You're going to see this. When you add up those numbers, you get 10,613. You can think of the 10 commandments and the 613 laws that we must come into unity with, okay, to be chosen as a bride of Yahshua. So let's look at 1061, because I'm going to take the first four numbers there. And lo and behold, you get first fruits. And then 1061 in the Greek means to give in marriage. From 1062, a wedding feast, marriage nuptials, or a marriage ceremony, the wedding supper of the Lamb. Look at that. Wow, what a coincidence. Okay. Now, you don't need to turn there. You're gonna learn more about this from Pastor, because you're gonna have some questions, I know. But that's okay. We should have questions. That's why we came here, right? And we got an eternity to get the answers. So let's turn to the next slide, or flip to the next slide. Now, this is the text of Revelation 21, 9 through 27, where he says, there came to me one of the 7 Malachim who had the 7 bowls full of the 7 last plagues, and he talked with me, saying, come, I will show you the bride's, the Lamb's wife. And it shows that he was carried away in the Spirit to a great and high mountain. And he showed me that great city And here it says, the holy Yahweh Shema, descending out of heaven from Yahweh. Remember that descending out of heaven? And it goes to show the foundation, the stones, the 12 stones of the foundation of this city, etc., right? And I don't want to read through the whole thing right now, but I'm going to take bits and pieces of it to show you what you're sitting in right now. We look at here. It says 2333. That's the number you get from this whole passage. I didn't leave anything out. It means a tent village, a small town, life-giving, living place, an encampment. From 2332, life giver, the first woman. From 2331, to show, to tell, to declare, and to live. Yes, this is the life-giving city. I'm going to prove it to you here. Can I have my next slide? When you take those meanings I just gave you from that gematria, okay, here's what you get. 1448 means sheepfolds, an enclosure for flocks, a wall, fence, hedged wall. From 1443, to close up, fence up, hedge, enclose, make up a wall, mason, repair. Now, remember that word mason is not a bad word. We're all supposed to be builders, okay? But they chose to build according to the wrong pattern, okay? So the building, we're supposed to be building up this house. In fact, Pastor told us we need to be investing in this city of Israel. In fact, I'd put everything you have into it, okay? I wouldn't hold anything back. You won't be sorry. This Greek 1453 means to waken, to raise up, to rise again, to arouse from the sleep of death, to recall the dead to life, to raise, construct, erect. From 58, an assembly, a place of assembly, congregation, to gather. And that's right, they're going to be gathering to this city of Israel. From 871, or the next number, 871, means to be made like, make like, similar to. And then your third number, 1074, well, we all know what that means about the firstborn, the first fruits. This in the Hebrew, and then the Greek, it means an age, a generation, a family, a genealogy, like each other in endowments and pursuits and character. From 1096, means joined and granted. This 1074 that's granted, that joins, we join with this work. We join ourselves to this work, and we're granted this fine linen. Let's go to the next slide. Remember, one of the meanings, it meant a life-giving city. Put that in gematria. Look what you get. First number 158 means love. From 157, dearly loves, friends, beloved. Strong's Greek 1325, the second number means given, bestowed, granted. The third number shows you what they're granted. 948, fine linen. Any questions? So when you add all those up, 2431 means joyful, cheerful, not grudging, willing, prompt to do anything. Sound familiar? When we're asked to do something, we should grumble and complain about it. From Hebrew 5175, it means accepted, pardoned, granted, married, spared. A life-giving city. Now let's look at all those meanings on the next slide. The meanings I just gave you, you put those in your gematria, look what you get. The first number, 1632 from 1486, means a lot, an allotted portion, a share. From 1419, great, prominent, nobles, great ones. Remember the nobles, the called out ones. In Isaiah chapter, I believe it's 14 at the beginning of the chapter. 2439 is the second number, and it means to clothe. From 2440, a robe, garments, robes. Sound familiar? Y'all got them on, right? And don't worry if you don't have one on. By Passover, we're all going to have them, right? So rejoice. Everything's done in unity in Yahweh's house, We've got to be in unity with Yahweh's laws, too. So Strong's Greek 1463 means to be clothed with. When you add up all those numbers, you get 5534. And it's from 5462, and it means to enclose, to shut in, deliver, pure. Think about that garden of Yahweh, that hedge, that protection that we're going to receive in Yahweh's house. Let's go to the next slide. Put in the city of Yisrael, the lamb's wives. First, let's look at the lamb's wives. What's that word again? 948. That number 948, it means fine linen. The city of Israel, the Lamb's wives, is 2268, and it means community from 2266. Remember that number? I've been showing it the whole feast. To unite, to be joined, to be compact, have fellowship with. Okay, remember, we need to be in unity. We have to come to this unity to be granted this great position that Yahweh wants to give us with his Son. When you add up those numbers, you get 6287, and it means beauty, bonnet, ornament, from 6286 to adorn, to beautify, to glorify, to honor, from 6288, and it means branch. Remember, Genesis 49:11, the branch that we tether ourselves to. And remember, in Zechariah 6:12, he says, behold my servant, the branch. He will branch out from his place, and he will build the house of Yahweh. Working with Yahshua. Let's go to the next slide. Foundations of the wall of the city. The first number, this is from the text of Revelation 21. These are quotes taken from that. 2106 means cornerstone. From 2122, brightness, splendor, and royalty. That second number, or that third number, 2381, means vision of Yahweh. When you put in vision of Yahweh, you get 1074. And you also get 2276, which is from 2266 again, which means to unite, be joined, be compact, have fellowship with. When you add up all the numbers, you get 3529. 3529. I don't know why it says 3429 there. Again, it was a late night. I apologize. I do make mistakes. From 3527, it says, in abundance, multiply, from 2266, to unite, be joined, be compact, have fellowship with. This is Yahweh showing us this unity we must come to, and that, we need to come into unity with the teachings of the house of Yahweh, okay? Remember, this city is built on the foundation of what? The cornerstone, Yahshua, the laws, and the prophets. Okay, that's what it's built upon. So get those books you just saw. Look at the next slide. The wall of the city of Yisrael, 322. Pastor's tag. Now, one of the stones that's used in the wall, it's the jacinth. They call it jacinth or jacinth. I don't know which one is really for real, but look what it comes up to. Jacinth in Yeketskia is Yahweh's name. It's one of the 12 stones. It means Yahweh's name. And look what it comes up to, 1122. Remember the sons, the colts. The other number, 2249, points to that number 2266 again. And it means to unite, be joined, be compact, have fellowship with. Now, how do we do this? We come into unity with Yahweh's teachings. Yahweh's not going to come into unity with us. We have got to come into unity with him, with this house, with these teachings. We must submit everything. We must give. I'm telling you, we've got to invest everything in this city of Israel. We've got to do it. At the end of the chapter, it says, only those who are written in the Lamb's book of life. So I put in who are written in the Lamb's book of life. 2268, it means community. Again, 2266. Now, isn't this amazing? It means to unite, be joined, be compact. That means be in unity. That doesn't mean we're all going to be crowded in like sardines. If you read a Psalm, I think it says Jerusalem is a compact city, and it means united, in unity. That's what compact means. It doesn't mean we're all going to be crowded and all be upset with each other and all this stuff. In fact, we're not going to be upset with each other, okay? It means to be compact, to have fellowship with. Now look at this. Yahweh is a unity. You heard that before? Yahweh's one. Put that in, you get 2266 again. And it means to unite, be joined, be compact, have fellowship with. Now, if you think that's a coincidence, hey, I did want to mention too, if you would hear me out on a real serious matter, the man that came and testified here yesterday, the commissioner, the former commissioner, he's scheduled to be sentenced here in a couple weeks. So keep him in your thoughts. These people, I don't know if you noticed his phone number when he was working as a principal at that school. It was up on the screen, and it said his phone number was 717, which means to gather, and the last four numbers were 0613. And that was before he even became a commissioner. So think, Yahweh's got 2 billion that he's going to gather here with us. Okay? It's all in Yahweh's plan. So be ready. We got to be ready, okay? Now, for my last slide, watch this. Yahweh is unity. Absorb that. Yahweh is unity. The first number is 187. The second number, 1122. You remember that meant sons, colts, firstborn. Remember all the meanings. When you add up all those numbers, you get 3479, and look whose name appears. It's Yisrayl. Yisrayl, the city of Yisrayl. Okay, we must be united. And now Yahweh said in the last days, in those days, in Zechariah 14:9, he says, Yahweh will be king over all the earth. In that day, Yahweh will prove to be a unity, and his name one. Now everybody give Yahweh a hand. That really felt nice to be able to slow down there. If you'd all please stand, my time is up. City of Israel, praise Yahweh. It's been a beautiful feast, and it's going to get even better as I turn it over now to the great Kohan Yehuda Hawkins.
Shalom. Please be seated. I was asked to do this sermon, or should I say presentation today, and we'll have to delay a little bit on Satan's trial. This came up. You've been hearing a lot about the planets, different planets and things out there, and I was asked to look at some of the ones around here, like I'm talking about the Earth, like Jupiter. Let's see, it's Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, and Pluto so far, although the astronauts and the Hubble telescope see a lot more than just that in this, even maybe in this galaxy or in this orbit. Then you have Alpha Centauri, you have the Antares and Antares, you have Ursa Major, Ursa Minor. All of those are big groups of planets or planets. And the thing of it is, as you know, in Revelation 12 verses 3-4, and we're going to start out talking about some of these gods or some of these fallen angels that you're talking about. There's not a small number. I gave up trying to count them all. It's just of the few that I got from information from the web, cross-referred to the books I use and everything. There were some interesting things about this. There are many fallen angels and many gods, and I'm sure there are plenty of planets out there for them to name after themselves. So I have no doubt that all of these names I'm going to give you, there are planets out there with that name. They've taken them over for the wrong reasons, because all of these gods I'm telling you about are fallen angels. The first one is Lilith, the fallen female angel who searches for children to kidnap or kill. And Obazot, the fallen angel female who kills newborns and causes stillbirths. They're not very nice things, are they? But turn to page 978. We're going to have to crank it up. Revelation 12, verses 3-4 on page 978. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon her heads. And her tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to be delivered in order to devour her son as soon as he was born. Lilith is the demon. Lilith, Lillith, is the demon Satan sends to search for the woman's son. Obizo, boy, that was hard to pray. Obizoot is the demon Satan sent to destroy the son of the woman if Lilith finds him. Remember, it said the son will be protected. Now, this is about the house of Yahweh, of course, and the woman. Now, Kemuel, a fallen angel who was destroyed by God. Now, that's Kemuel. All of these names are probably alien to you, or the first time you've heard of them. To be quite honest with you, I didn't see them myself until 2 days ago. But they're there. Kemuel is a fallen angel who was destroyed by God. We know Satan is God, the God of this world. This is God at the hands of Satan is just an absolute truth that always comes to pass when someone like Hillel usurps authority and takes over a kingdom. And again, Revelation 12:3-4, and there appeared another wonder in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon her head, and her tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven and did cast them to the earth. Kemuel, according to this mythology, was assassinated by Hillel, a.k.a. Satan, because she wanted to make sure that no one in the 1/3 of Malachim who fell and who helped her set up as a dictator would turn against her and take her out. History proves this historical axiom. That means, in other words, the way things are going to be. Hitler had Ernst Röhm killed after Hitler was set up as Chancellor of Germany just before World War II. Joseph Stalin had Leon Trotsky killed after Stalin became Generalissimo of Russia just before World War II as well. And if you read British history, many of the British kings had other members of the royal family assassinated so they could be secure in their throne. Now, all of these evils done by these gods were foretold by one of their worshippers. We're talking about Hillel, Obizot, Lilith, that Kemuel, all these gods that caused all these problems or were called on by Satan to destroy the woman or the son. All these things have been foretold by one of their own worshipers. Look at Genesis 4:13-14 on page 3. Page 3, verse 13. And Cain said to Yahweh, my punishment is greater than I can bear. But look at verse 14. Surely you have driven me out this day from the face of the ground. I shall not be seen by your face. I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond on the earth. For there shall be continual war, vengeance, and retaliation. These gods fight among themselves. This one wants to be the top dog. This one wants to be higher up. And they are willing to kill or destroy their own to do it. Being a fallen angel is never a safe or viable line of work. They would be a lot safer sweeping floors or mopping floors or painting a wall. There's another god, Rahab. Now, this is not the Rahab of Yahshua 2 verses 1-7. Fallen angel of pride whose name means violence. Proverbs 16:18 says, pride comes before the fall. Here's another one, Ruach, the angel of headaches. Well, does anyone have some aspirin, Tylenol, or ibuprofen? Maybe that God needs it. Samael, evil fallen angel whose name means the blind God. How about that? God needs glasses. Satan, Christian fallen angel whose name means adversary. Shemyaza, fallen angel leader and one of the sons of God. This is another of the 1/3 of the Malachim that Satan conned to leave Yahweh with her, whom she assassinated. Now that's the mythology of these gods. Shaks, fallen angel appears as a stork or stealer of money. Now I thought this was really something. Remember the legend, the stork came to deliver babies to parents. Well, after they got the medical bill, they said they were robbed. Well, that's what this God does. This stork steals money. Wormwood, fallen angel who brings plagues upon the earth. Revelation 8:10-11 says on page 976, and the third Malach sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were like a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood, and the third part of the waters became wormwood. And many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. Another Moloch who, like Hillel, became bitter and fell. Now that God wants to make all creation bitter because misery loves company. Penemuel, fallen angel who corrupts mankind through writing. Now this is really a bad one. This is the one that goes to the Christians and helps them and Hillel bring out all these false translations of the Holy Scriptures. Jeremiah 8 on page 580. How can you say we are the wise, and the law of Yahweh is with us? Behold, the lying pen of the scribes has falsified them and written them wrong. Yochanan Mark 7 verses 7 through 9 on page 767. But in vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. For laying aside the commandment of Yahweh, you hold the tradition of men. Then he said to them, how well you reject the commandment of Yahweh so that you may keep your own tradition. These fallen angels and their human followers are indeed an ugly of heart deceived bunch. Satan lies to her own. She don't know he's lying to us. He lies to everybody. And that's what Yochanan 8 verses 44 and 45 says. But remember that even though they are actually very ugly beings in every way, they are of a spiritual wickedness that is on high. Ephesians 6:12. And they all have the ability to appear in all ways as perfect messengers of the light. Oh, yeah, children of the light. There's a church by that name. 2 Corinthians 11, 13 through 15 on page 907. This will be our last scripture. 2 Corinthians. Remember this God, Penemuel. That's the one that was vital to Satan's getting a false Bible out. That was the expert. The fallen angel who corrupts mankind through writing. He wrote all those lies and put them into the scriptures and turned the Holy Scriptures, the book of Yahweh, from the writings of truth to a lie. Just as Jeremiah 8 said, and Yochanan Mark 7 through 9 says. But remember, even though they are actually very ugly in every way, they are of a spiritual wickedness, and they all have the ability to appear in all ways as perfect messengers of the light. 2 Corinthians 11, 13 to 15. Here we go, page 907. Last scripture. There will be far much more on this as we go along. These gods are all part of the big conspiracy, along with the ones whom the planets of this galaxy so far have been named are Aphrodite, Apollo, Zeus, all of them. I'm not questioning any of it. I'm saying these are out there with them. They're part of the third of the Malachim that fell, the fallen angels. 2 Corinthians 11, 13 to 15. For such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of the Messiah. And no marvel, for Satan herself is transformed into an angel of light. Therefore it is no great thing if her ministers also are transformed as the ministers of righteousness, whose end will be according to their works. The bottom line is still the same. Let us hear the conclusion of the entire matter. Reverence Yahweh by keeping all of his laws as are shown in the book of Yahweh, Isaiah 34:16. That is the duty of every person who reverences Yahweh. But remember, Yeshua said what? We must always be aware of all these gods, not just Jupiter and those others, but all of these in that list I told you about. I showed you a few of them. We must be aware of them and what they are doing, because salvation depends on it. Yahweh bless your understanding, and hopefully we'll have much more on this later on. I now turn the services over to the great Kohan Ilya Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Please be seated. The peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. Of course, here coming out in the news, as Yahshua Messiah said in Matthew 24, that it would be as in the days of Sodom and Gomorrah in these last days. And of course, coming out in the news, CDC reporting that STDs, once again, every new year is at an all-time high. Every next year you get, it's always at an all-time high. And listening to what one of the doctors says, Pastor's been bringing this for years. The medication they have to treat it is no longer working. It's out of hand. And you'll hear her say, we only have one, and it's not working either. So watch this. It's growing, and it's growing and growing, but they give the attributes to this as the misuse of technology, to where technology is being used to, where it used to be a city was where you would sow your wild oats. Now it's global, from one end of the earth to the other. And then the defense budget. This is very important to notice. It shows how China is spending more money. Russia is spending more money. The United States is spending more than Russia and China combined. Well, why is this? Everybody is building up for a great war, a large war, and the United States realizes if they go to war with Russia, they're going to war with China. If they go to war with China, they're going to war with Russia. They're going to join together. And you can see this building up because China is trying to get away from the petrodollar. Russia's already said they figured out how to get rid of the petrodollar in their government. And then you have these other countries that are tagging along. And remember why they're doing this. Very quickly, write down page 84 of this Mark of the Beast, volume 1. And it's talking about this great city that sits upon the 7 hills. And Pastor says, in this relationship, Yochanan shows this beastly governmental system doing as history shows Nimrod did, or this Nimrod system did from the beginning. He built his kingdom. This kingdom was built by Cush through the use of Terah. He built this kingdom through the use of Terah. History shows the Roman Catholic Church used Terah tactics to strengthen its political position. The Scripture shows the same Terah tactics will be used again in the last days. They will not be in secret as they show now, or how they operate, but openly as the time draws near to the end. And remember, they're being shown because they're being revealed, as 2 Thessalonians says. Pastor is revealing this son of sin, or this son of perdition that is going through this world today. And then you see Hong Kong. Of course, Hong Kong, many riots taking place, a lot of arguing taking place over there, and it's showing how China is saying the United States is fueling this. The United States is fueling this division as China is trying to reabsorb Hong Kong back into its country. Remember, Hong Kong is part of China, but it's not part of China. There's a border that goes through, and Hong Kong is like an entity that exists in itself, but it's supposed to be readapting itself back into China as the agreement was made back in the 80s between the British, the UK, and China, that they would reabsorb them in. Well, it's showing how they're rioting, even going into, as they have what they call their State of the Union, a lot of rioting going in and things not going, it's not gelling, so to speak. As China's trying to pull them in, the United States is causing, and they show that they're talking to people like Pompeo, who's the Secretary of State. But they're fueling them where they're going in, and these are leaders fighting and arguing and screaming to the point they can't even have their State of the Union. And then Turkey being built, Turkey growing. Turkey is something, and watch how this shows how Turkey has been built since this last generation has started in 1934. It's been a process to where Turkey implemented democracy. Now, this is after the fall of the Ottoman Empire. Democracy, church and state. Remember, that's where the government rules and the government runs things, and the religion actually runs it in the background. But you have church and state. And then you also have where Turkey implemented all your children must go to school and learn how to be what Turkey wants them to be. Well, that's what we see also here in the United States. And then moving along, you have Turkey, and of course they have this pause over there. And you have President Trump saying, and he's laughing about it jokingly, saying you've got to allow them to fight. You have to allow them to fight. You got to allow them to get in there and fight like children. Now, of course, he finishes it off. You heard President Trump say that we've told Turkey, if you go against what we've said, that we will destroy your economy. Well, there's no question about the instructions that Turkey was given, because Revelations clearly says that what he's told Turkey, do what you want to do, but hurt not the oil. Because remember, that's what they want, is the oil. And it finishes with the article where Pastor read the video showing Trump saying, we now have control of the oil that is in the Middle East. At this time, we could please go ahead and play the news.
Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you the news that relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yisrayl Hawkins. Well, in the news today, we are going to talk about the U.S. military falling behind in some of their military advancements. Experts now questioning, will the U.S. be able to defend against some of the most recent military advancements from Russia and China, the hypersonic missiles that they've developed. So we'll have those details. Also, protests going on in Hong Kong. Larry McGee is going to be covering that for us. And then several stories on Turkey and regarding their offensive that they just made into Syria, the safe zone, why they want to do it, the ceasefire, how that's working, and what President Erdogan would like to do with the Syrian refugees that flowed into Turkey with that continual war going on there in Syria. But first, we're going to talk about the rising STDs. Now, according to health officials in Sacramento County, California, is seeing epidemic levels of certain sexually transmitted diseases. State health officials say syphilis, gonorrhea, and chlamydia cases have all rose to their highest levels in 3 decades. Now, across the U.S., the CDC reports infections from the same 3 STDs has risen for the 5th consecutive year.
Wow. While health officials believe a number of factors contribute to contracting the diseases, it is clear the ability to meet new people in the cyber age has opened the doors, giving people more access to other people so that they can meet.
Well, nurse and Sacramento Life Center clinical manager Julie Criswell told NBC affiliate KCRA3 News that your dating circle used to just be people that you ran into at Safeway or at work or something like that, but now with social media, your dating circle is the entire world. And that's a big circle out there. That's what's causing all the STDs to spread so quickly.
That's right. Well, President Donald Trump is pleased with America's increase in military spending, which has made it the largest military budget in U.S. history. It is at least 4 times larger than China's budget and over 10 times greater than Russia's. Trump has said, the stronger we are, the less chance we have of going to war.
Well, therefore, the president supports projects that help the U.S. military become more technologically advanced. Projects like the USS Zumwalt, put into commission in 2016. Now, the stealth-capable guided destroyer is the newest member of the Navy's fleet, but technology comes at a hefty price tag. The Zumwalt cost around $4 billion to build.
Wow. But U.S. military experts, believe America has to spend even more on military technology, and if it doesn't, there's a fear that a war fought with either Russia or China would be lost. Well, this news comes from a new report researched by the National Defense Strategy commissioned by Congress.
The bipartisan report warns that for every branch of the military, quote, available resources are clearly insufficient. Now, if in the event that the U.S. was fighting a major adversary while at the same time trying to deter threats from other enemies. Now, former Deputy National Security Advisor to Vice President Dick Cheney, John Hannon, says the report is a, quote, flashing red light. The United States risks real strategic insolvency and the danger that we could lose regional wars in critical theaters of operations.
President Trump feels otherwise. Our technology, he says, is far superior to anybody else's. Well, our jet fighters, even our tankers, but our planes, our ships, there's nobody that makes the equipment like we make it. So obviously he feels a lot differently regarding the United States military and their equipment in comparison to what those who are actually on the ground and dealing with these things, their perception of it is, a lot different.
Right, we're falling behind, but his is we're way advanced.
That's right.
Well, however, that equipment, as we mentioned, comes at a price. While America has been fighting a war on terror, countries like China and Russia have been busy developing highly sophisticated military weapons like Russia's new high-speed hypersonic missile.
A new report from the Accountability Office warns there is no existing countermeasures, to defend against these hypersonic weapons. Experts say the American military needs to refocus. Michael O'Hanlon from the Brookings Institution told CBN News China's military budget is likely to double by 2030 and certainly at least double again by mid-century. At that point, it would be the larger than today's U.S. military budget.
Well, he went on to say Russia, first of all, is not going to overtake us, but have enough to be a big problem anyway. They've got 5,000 nuclear weapons, just like we do. They have conventional superiority in regions where we have allies we are sworn by treaties to defend. So they're big enough to be a problem, and even if their budget is only 1/10 of ours.
Yeah, the thing that people fail to remember is that, with all these nuclear weapons stockpiled by at least the three countries, and there's more than that, United States, China, and Russia, an all-out nuclear war is going to destroy everybody, irregardless of their defense system.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Eric Alderman, an American diplomat and former defense official, warns that both Russia and China are investing in new nuclear weapons and delivery platforms. He commented, "We've grown very complacent about this because since 1945, nobody has used nuclear weapons in anger. And so I think there's a tendency to think no one will ever do this."
Well, aside from North Korea and Iran, the U.S. believes no other nation will launch a premeditated attack. Now, currently, this administration is spending $716 billion on defense, which is still less when compared to the GDP of Ronald Reagan's presidency. Now, the experts say it is not clear who has the most advanced capabilities in the cyber room. So now the question is, do we direct more resources into an already enormous military budget just to stay on the cutting edge and keep Russia and China from outspending us? But one thing, Katan, to keep in mind with that spending is, a lot of the U.S.'s cost is from keeping these wars going, like the war on terror, the troops over there, all the different areas that we've gone into, wars taking place right now with the United States, and that is a lot of that cost on the spending of our military. So these other countries, Russia, China, they don't have that. So they're focusing on their developing their weapons while we're focusing on paying for the wars, supporting the wars that we're already fighting.
Yeah, kind of like when you deal with some people, it's not about the quantity as much as it is the quality. And of course, Russia and China have been working to develop the quality of their weapons by creating hypersonic delivery systems for nuclear warheads that the United States have already admitted there's no defense for them. Well, now we're going to take a look at one of those countries we just mentioned, China, who has been dealing with some uprisings from the area of Hong Kong, as well as some of the things we see taking place with Turkey and its war against Syria. Larry, what do you have for us?
The push for the New World Order is clothed in the banner of Western democracy. And so when sedition arises in a nation accompanied by protest for democratization, that nation can be assured that they have been targeted for reorganization and annexation by the imperial powers. Such is the case in the battle brewing over Hong Kong, which actually belongs to China and is now beset by political uprisings and calls for democracy so severe that the region's chief executive, Carrie Lam, was recently forced to give the region's State of the Union address over video due to heckling and harassment. On yet another occasion, the leader was yet again forced out of the assembly by lawmakers in the nation who called themselves the pro-democracy camp, who accused Ms. Lam of having blood on her hands. These same lawmakers are reported to be in regular consultation with the U.S. In the current global competition, alliances are shaky, unreliable, and created more out of selfish convenience than any true concern for all parties involved. Reports are that the Kurds are learning this hard lesson firsthand after helping the U.S. combat and defeat Daesh, which is yet another group reported to have been an American ally/tool at one time. America has now pulled back their protection from the Kurds, and at the same time, the Kurds' longtime enemy, Turkey, has initiated a military campaign against the group to seize the choicest parts of the land it acquired in Syria while helping the U.S. to push out ISIS. Turkey is calling the area in Syria that it would like to annex a safe zone. But for many observers, it is starting to look like nothing more than plundering and a de facto extension of Turkey's borders. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
In their report, it's pretty easy to see that depending on which side you hear the news from, whether it's the Western media or the local media there in Turkey, you get a completely different side of the story. So interesting there, as they mentioned, that they had to be careful. There's a war in the medias there, and what's actually being said, and the truth, lies somewhere in the middle. Well, let's take a look at an upcoming video here regarding Turkey's plan to address the Kurdish people displaced from their homes in Syria who are now living as refugees in southern Turkey.
Throughout Syria's civil war, the country's borders have not changed, but the demographics within those borders have, drastically. When the war began in 2011, Syria's Kurdish minority was spread in pockets along the border with Turkey. Over the 8.5 years of fighting, Kurdish militias have gradually taken control of almost 400 kilometers of territory along that border. The Turkish government now looks at its southern frontier and sees potential enemies at the gates, what it calls a terror block at its border. It says it wants to turn that area into a safe zone, a place refugees currently in Turkey can relocate to in Syria.
Yeah, it's sad to see that the real victims of these wars, these scrimmages, are the innocent civilians who, in many cases, are displaced from their homes and have to become refugees in other countries. Well, after a referendum passed on April 16th that will give more power to Turkey's president, some people are comparing him to the first president of the new Republic of Turkey. Well, let's take a look at this video as it explains the history of the young country and its current leader.
On April 16th, Turkey narrowly voted yes on a referendum that will dramatically reorganize the government. It allows changes that give sweeping powers to the president, Tayyip Erdogan. He could have complete control of Turkey's budget and military, will be able to appoint judges to the courts without a vote, can dissolve parliament whenever he chooses, and can stay in power until 2029. This has prompted concerns that he's becoming too authoritarian. And these concerns aren't that outlandish, mostly because Turkey was built by an authoritarian.
First president of the First Turkish Republic, Mustafa Kemal, during the 1920s, is now granted dictatorial powers and is himself christened Ataturk, meaning father of the Turks.
Ataturk was a military general who created the Republic of Turkey out of the collapsed Ottoman Empire in 1923. During his 15 years in office, he enjoyed similar powers now held by Erdogan. He used them to build Turkey into a modern and secular state.
Turkey's new government separates church and state. Turkey's new government separates church and state.
He put mosques under state control.
Islamic traditions are shattered.
He made literacy rates rise. He made schools open to everyone.
To make a modern nation, all Turkey must be sent to school.
Ataturk also industrialized his country. Under his watch, the industrial sector saw a sharp increase, and his liberal foreign policies built a close relationship with the West, which paved the way for Turkey to join the NATO alliance in 1952.
We know that Ataturk succeeded because for decades it was a modern, secular Western country like he wanted it to be. Now you have President Erdogan. President Erdogan is going in literally the opposite direction. He wants to make the country much more openly religious.
But how does a religious, conservative leader acquire so much power in a secular country? Erdogan went on to pull the country out of poverty by giving more opportunities to Turkish entrepreneurs and expanding access to foreign markets. This led to a sharp rise in the GDP, and inflation plummeted. Turkey's success even prompted efforts to join the EU. This all made Erdogan wildly popular.
It was like he came onto a boat that was listing and taking on water, and he managed to get the water out of the boat and make the boat sail straight again. So for many years, you could see why a man like this would be as powerful as he became.
In 2013, there was a small, peaceful demonstration in Istanbul's Gezi Park to protest Erdogan's plans to reconstruct military barracks that would include a shopping center and a mosque. Seeing the demonstration as opposition, Erdogan sent in riot police to remove the protesters, which quickly attracted more protesters.
It got bigger and bigger because it was a proxy. It morphed from being a protest over a park to being a protest against Erdogan, against how religious he was becoming, and it got violent.
So in July 2016, they staged a coup, and it almost worked. There was just one problem. The military couldn't get the public support this time. Erdogan had found a new way to reach his supporters.
I want to encourage my people to the streets and invite them to the airports. And together, as people gather, show them, by letting them come with their tanks, to see what they are going to do it right there to the people.
Erdogan had this amazing moment where he used FaceTime on his iPhone to kind of rally the country and say, defend the country, defend us against the military. Come, Turks, come to me, come help rally around me. And it worked. You had secular Turks for the first time in years defend Erdogan. You had religious Turks literally streamed from mosques into the streets to fight the military. The military overstepped. You had Turkish F-16s fire rockets and missiles at parliament. Turkish tanks fired at people in the streets. That was very effective for him.
Erdogan emerged from the fighting more popular than ever and ramped up his purge of the opposition. More than 100,000 journalists, academics, military officers, and politicians have been arrested since the coup attempt. Tens of thousands remain in detention. This brings us to the recent referendum, which follows Erdogan's post-coup popularity. He set it in motion to acquire more power and to make it permanent. But the vote was much closer than it was anticipated, suggesting that much of the country wants to hold on to the secular Turkey created by Ataturk, and they're willing to fight for it.
But I do think you're going to have the inevitable tension of a president who believes he's entitled to more power, taking more and more of it, and what remains a somewhat secular country that isn't comfortable with giving him that power. Do those tensions play out politically and in court, or do those play out in the streets?
Certainly an interesting history on Turkey and the leaders that first started Turkey and now in power today.
Yeah, only in the 20s, so that hasn't been very long.
Well, a few scrimmages can be heard during the 5-day pause in fighting to allow the YPG to exit during the Turkey offensive in Syria. Both the YPG and Turkey accuse one another of not upholding what the U.S. calls a ceasefire, and Turkey calls the suspension of its military operation. Now, President Erdogan disputed the claims of not honoring the ceasefire and expects the YPG's withdrawal over the next 4 days and the U.S. to oversee the process. Now, he also threatened that the offensive will resume within minutes if the Kurdish fighters don't abide by the deal.
Well, 15 million of Syria's 80 million people are Kurdish, but the Turkish government has reiterated that its target is not the Kurdish people, but the YPG because of its links to the PKK, which is designated as a terrorist group. Well, Donald Tusk, the European Council president, is urging Turkey to withdraw its troops from Syria immediately and to respect humanitarian law. Erdogan says that Turkey isn't using the safe zone to gain territory and wants at least 1 million Syrian refugees in Turkey to go home.
Well, Erdogan said it's not a problem for Turkey if Syrian forces control the areas cleared of PKK and the YPG forces. Now, at the end, the aim is to clear the safe zone of these terror groups. Securing the safe zone is something that Erdogan and Putin will discuss during their upcoming meeting in Sochi. Then again, they'll meet in Geneva to figure out a political solution to the 8-year-long conflict in Syria.
Yeah. President Trump addressed a group of supporters regarding the recent ceasefire in northern Syria between Turkey and Kurdish fighters. Trump credited himself with bringing about the ceasefire, saying to a crowd of cheering supporters, "Sometimes you have to let them fight it out while they see or until they see that the fighting isn't so easy. Sometimes you just have to let them fight."
Well, later, Trump, in a press conference, spoke about his call to President Erdogan. He mentioned how, although there was some sniper fire, it was eliminated quickly and the ceasefire continues. We have ISIS under guard, and Turkey is also watching over things, and the Kurds are very satisfied with how things are going. The president also mentioned how the U.S. now has control over the oil in the Middle East that everyone was so worried about. We, referring to the U.S., now have control over it.
And that seems to be kind of the main focus in any of these wars, especially when the United States is involved in it, is somehow getting a hold of some type of oil, securing oil for the United States, which, by the way, is the largest exporter of oil than any country. I mean, we've surpassed Saudi Arabia as well as far as exporting oil and the production of the oil that we have. But it's always behind a lot of these things we see in northern Syria and Iran, and some of the other places that we've gone into and brought forth these wars. And so it's sad to see that so many people have to lose their lives and also be displaced from their homes as a result of chasing after that oil.
And even as you mentioned there, now the U.S. saying they have control over it, some of the leaders in those countries, they chuckled when President Trump said, we're going to watch over the oil, because they said, well, now at least they're admitting what they're here
Right,
for, what they were after the whole time. So, it's it definitely shows you that the oil is a major factor in these wars.
Yeah. Well, if you would like to learn a little bit more about what the Holy Scriptures say concerning the oil in these last days, and the fact that the prophets showed, Israel Hawkins has told us and brought forth many times, that they would actually be saying not to hurt the oil at this time, contact the House of Yahweh, and when you do, don't forget to request your free copy of the Prophetic Word magazine and the monthly newsletter. Here's how.
Well, to write the House of Yahweh, you can write them at The House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them on any of their websites by going to Yahweh.com, YisraelHawkins.com, or Yahweh'sBranch.com. If you'd like to visit our website, you can go to YPNnews.com. For any emails to the House of Yahweh, you can email them at info@Yahweh.com. Any international calls, you can call the number that's on your screen now. And once again, don't forget to go to YisraelSays.com and AskYisrael.com to answer any and all of your scriptural questions. You can type it right in the search. Pages and pages of information will come up. You can search through it, guaranteed to expand your knowledge on the Holy Scriptures.
Well, don't go anywhere. Get your jars ready, because up next is the golden oil being poured out from the House of Yahweh that will bring you life everlasting. Yisrael Hawkins is up next, so stay with us. Everyone here at YPN News, I'm Katan Alexander.
And I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
Thank you for watching.
Go ahead and stand really quickly. I want to show you an article that came out yesterday. And of course, remember what Pastor said, in and around the great river Euphrates, prophecy showing these things. Well, President Erdogan says his ambitions are to go beyond Syria. He says he now wants a nuclear weapon, and he will not accept no for an answer. And at this time, I would like to introduce the greatest teacher in the world, the great Kahan Yisrael, Abel Hawkins.
Well, you're all still here on the last great day. Did you see that, Yahweh? Praise Yahweh. Please be seated. I don't want to, don't want to get started crying because this is the last great day. It's really wonderful. And the only thing, we got about another 6 months before we'll come together and be together eternally. Praise Yahweh. I need to read you just a little bit here. I'll show you this picture that the world is full of right now. You got it? See all them boats on that ship and another fighter ship out here? Well, that's what's taking over the world. The oceans are full of it. They're even contaminating the oceans. But this that Kohan Elia Hyler Hawkins was bringing out just before I came up, the road to the new Middle East runs through Damascus. Now, what they're talking about is the planned global order is what they're speaking of here. the Middle East, where a changing global balance of power and renewed great power competitions has stimulated a dynamic where both international and regional powers continue to carve out their respective sphere of influence. Ultimately, the Middle East, this is their plan. These are long-range plans, probably a few hundred years in the making. Remember, a day with Yahweh is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as one day. Well, that's the way it is with Satan and the gods too, because of their living long lives and of course carrying out long-range plans that doesn't seem that long in the making for them. But ultimately, the Middle East is fast becoming the region where the first significant conflagration relating to the emergence of a new global order are taking place. We brought that out in several books already, and now we're seeing it. We're seeing it come to pass in detail, just like the prophecy showed it would. The parking lot this morning, where Yahweh's bride, Yeshua's bride, a bride is not, this is speaking, of course, of unity. It's speaking of several different scriptures where the bride comes into unity with the husband. And, of course, this is the symbol of Yeshua bringing to unity his house in these last days that will be the ones who actually choose unity, choose to, they see and understand the laws and prophecies of Yahweh. They see and understand this long-range 6,000-year plan of Yahweh, and they see the nations that Yahweh is allowing to go their way under the establishment of Satan, Halil, and they can see, all of you see now, I notice, at least the most of you do, that Yahweh's plan is the only solution to solving these problems. There's no Band-Aids or anything close to it that could even, every time they try to solve a problem, they create a few more. And of course, this is what you're seeing now with Turkey and Syria. The parking lot here, I looked out this morning and I said, well, Yahweh, everyone is still here. Such a great crowd, such a beautiful bride of unity here that Yahweh has put together. If you have time, this afternoon is probably your last chance unless you intend to stay after the feast. But the maze down here that Kohan David Heimerman Hawkins put so many hours in, he says it takes about 30 minutes to go through it if you read fast. I don't want you doing that because you won't get it. 3 hours if 3 hours maybe if you read in a hurry and really don't study it. 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years if you really study it. What we've got up there now. if you have a phone that'll take pictures and you can read it, you could go back and start putting some study into this. And by the time Passover gets here, we'll have this maze finished. It's right across from the Peaceful Solution. Shows you where to enter. And notice each word, every word. And take it with you if you can. Study it while you're gone. Yahweh named me. He named the house of Yahweh. What you see in the so-called New Testament, it's not a New Testament. It's book 2 that was prophesied to be brought about by a sinless man who came. He changed the world. Everyone knows that. Even the disbelievers know that. What we see, they translated it first into other languages. It was written in Hebrew, but they translated it to other languages. But if you'll get this in mind, you have what is called an interlinear that gives you the Hebrew, and where things are quoted from book 1 of the book of Yahweh, and it is the book of Yahweh. Now, if you look that up in the interlinear, it'll say scroll of Yahweh, but I brought a sermon showing you that this is speaking of a book that's written on both sides of the page. Scrolls are not that way, so we know that this was in book form even then, and it was also a prophecy, of course, that we would have the book of Yahweh. Now, it was for the disciples to live by, and Yeshua and their families, but it wasn't the finishing work of Yahweh that Yahweh said, in the last days I will establish my house. Yeshua showed my house, Yahweh's house, was his house, and then Yahweh also showed that the branch would branch out and build the house of Yahweh. So that's our job. So that prophecy comes down to us as being our job, which we have brought forth already. We brought forth the book of Yahweh that was taken away in 70 AY. No one saw it after that, and it stayed in prison for over 1,500 years in Rome, of course, and people lost their lives because they translated that and got it out to the public and worked on it, trying to get it translated and printed, and finally did with a whole bunch of dead people wiped out with sickness and disease that they brought upon themselves. And Yahweh knew when this was going to take place, prophesied it, and of course it did take place. And then with the cardinals all dead that was fighting against the release of the scriptures, they were dead now. So then comes those who are still living that wanted to print the scriptures, and they brought it forth in 1600s. That is, they translated it just in time to get it to the people in Oklahoma, but to the whole world. They got it to the whole world, the King James Version. Now, the gods, of course, that David Yehuda spoke of this morning, their original names were not Jupiter. It couldn't be Jupiter. The letter J was only invented in 1600. You can get that in most Webster's dictionaries. They stopped printing it in some, but some of the older ones you can get it. But the letter J was invented in the 1600s for the King James Version to go out to all the world. And with that King James Version, you worship gods. It's filled with God worship, but you can figure out they made some mistakes and they printed the name Jehovah. So when you start finding out about the name Jehovah, of course, you find out that they had mixed the vowel points up with three different words, three different Hebrew words, and caused an unpronounceable name. The Judaica Encyclopedia says the history shows that the name Yahweh and how to pronounce it has never been lost and came all the way down through history to us in these last days. The book of Yahweh, in case you don't know it, didn't come out till 1987 by the House of Yahweh, who was prophesied to put it out and to use it and teach from it. Praise Yahweh. I started off with the King James Version. Yahweh named me Yisrayl. You know what that word means if you look it up in the Yahmatrix? Put it down, check me out. It means unity. Unity. Now that's what we've been harping on here lately, because we've got to. Yahweh will only accept volunteers. He doesn't force anyone to keep his laws. He even told Satan, he established Halil over all the kingdoms. Well, that's what we're going to take over once hers collapses. Yahweh told her, you just brought curses on yourself here in doing what you did. You brought curses on your seed and my seed, speaking of mankind. Yahweh also tagged this generation's work. This comes out in the Gematria 2. My tag numbers, 1074, 322, my date of birth, 828, the year I was born, 1934, all of that and much more is given to you in prophecy and in the Yahmatrix, which we're bringing out weekly now, trying to bring it out. We're way behind. I know we're way behind the team that's working on Yahmatrix is running way behind. There's some of this stuff that we put off that really needs to be brought out for you to understand the future, and we're going to try to get it shortly after the feast. We're getting it out in other ways, but we really need to get it out from right here in order for it to be on Facebook and Google and so forth. There's where we're getting a lot of viewers. He even gave my addresses. If that weren't enough, he's given my addresses where the book Unveiling Satan was written, who wrote it, the team that hibernated there at that address and finished that book. He gives the first address of land that I bought and owned in Abelin, had a successful business there. I sold it out. It's still successful. It's one of the best business areas there is in Abelin, and it gives the address where I put out the first newsletter. All of that's in the Gematria. The Yahmatrix. He gave the addresses. There is no room for doubt, brethren, that I can see from anyone if you have a question, of course, about this your matrix, we got people that can answer you easily. They study it day and night. They're devoted to it. So don't hesitate to let it be known, so we can help you with it. But this is the house of Yahweh. I don't see how anyone could doubt that. There's no way that anyone could go back and start a generation over. This is it, and everything that's prophesied for this generation, it's here. It's not leaving. Those names for the gods, and like the first name for Satan, she took on this character, and her characters are what is frequently sent to Yahweh. Frequently. Well, the frequencies that's going forth to Yahweh and the heavens, including the gods, but it's also going forth. It's like the world today now. You have leaders. It's everything that is here on earth is inspired by those gods that Yahweh said in Genesis to begin with. Genesis 2, he said, don't go this way. If you go this way, you're going to perish. You're going to bring death to yourselves, and you're going to bring perishing. Well, that's exactly what they have brought. They went ahead and went their own way anyway, and said, oh, no, we can do it our way. It'll all turn out fine. Well, it's not, and there's no way to solve these problems that they've created right here, and they can get their global order, started, but it never stays orderly. It becomes disorderly very rapidly when someone wants to take part of the oil that was taken from them. And when that someone wants to get part of that oil, the prophecy said, don't hurt the oil now. If you hurt the oil, we're going to bring this on you. And Yada, who let me see if I have that right here. I brought out the word Yada, which means ignorantly knowledgeable, unaware, ignorant, learning by experience instead of taking Yahweh's word for it. How could they do that, continue to do that, after 6,000 years that Yahweh has not only told them, but it's written for them, where they can see it and study it like we do and know, well, everything he says is true. Even this bomb is here. We've got the nuclear bomb here in this generation, as he prophesied back at the beginning in Deuteronomy 28. He prophesied that. Here it is. Why don't we repent? It looks like they would say, why don't we repent and start following Yahweh and let him get us out of this mess? See, that would be the thing to do. You preachers out there, y'all could start this ball to rolling if you united, and all of you, we'll guide you, we'll help you, we'll teach you how to do it. It is possible. You'd have to repent, and Yahweh says you're not going to do that. But you who will repent, why don't you go ahead and repent and get out of this mess that you're in yourself and be a part of bringing this back? That's what we've done, And the house of Yahweh is the one that's going to stop wars. They're going to go, it's by man it came, and by man it's going to end. We're going to be the ones that Yahweh leads. He leads us because we're in unity. We're not going to fight him back. We're going to do what he says, and he's going to use us to lead the world. I'm talking about the universe that he assigned Satan, that is Hillel. He established her over it, her and her sons. And that's the reason she said, be like the gods. She is including them. He established her over the world, which means universe, as I'll show you. It comes from a Hebrew word, cosmos, and it actually means the entire universe. Now, he set her in a very high office in Jupiter, inside that so-called planet, and this went to her head. Pretty soon she is saying, I'm smarter than all them elders put together. I'm going to run this my way. I'm going to take over the kingdom of Yahweh. Going to take it over. Well, this word that I gave you, ignorantly stupid, unawares, learning by experience, that's like shooting a man and see if you can get away with it. It's like setting up bombs in Turkey. Boy, are we sorry we did that now. Nuclear bombs. And wanting them back now. Well, that word that I'm describing here is yada. And yada, if you remember the sermons, came out, I brought it out several months ago. Yada is given, the prophecy is given in Genesis 49 and verse 10. Well, of course, Satan rebelled, Hillel rebelled, her and the gods, and they did it Yahweh's way for a while, and they said, oh, that's bad. It takes too much time for me to do it that way. Let's take this shortcut here and do it this way. And then another one. Well, they were told to wash the dishes in a certain manner, and they did it for a while, but it's a little bit more work to get dishes clean and sanitary when someone has eaten out of them. So, hey, nobody's going to notice it. Let's just rinse this thing off and get it out of here. And pretty soon, the camp was getting sick. Well, this is what you see. This is what you saw in Jupiter. I'll put it that way. It's not Jupiter as the great Kohan David Yehuda brought out. That's not his name. And it would do well if you know this and know that this was some of the stuff along with Jesus. Jesus, that J wasn't available till 1600. What did they call him before that? What was his real name? Well, his real name was something else, that one. But Yeshua, who they put in his place, they replaced him with a god. Yeshua was the true Savior. It means Yahweh will save his people from their sin. Now, he will save them. In the last days, I will establish my house. That's Micaiah 4, 1 through 3. In the last days, now the house was always allowed to be destroyed. Abel was the first and they murdered. So Yeshua came, lived a sinless life, and he says, I'm going to establish my house on complete unity. Well, where did he get that? He brought it forth from Book 1. And he says, the blessings only come from the house of Yahweh. And you won't see me until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of Yahweh. So that was in Matthew 16, verse 18. Well, he didn't establish the house at that time. He laid the foundation for the house to be established. He with his donkeys. Thither the donkeys to the vine. Thither the donkey to the vine, but then thither the donkey's colts to the branch, the chosen branch. And then in Zechariah 6, he said, the two of you, Yeshua and the branch, will work together to establish unity, a unified house. And I don't know of anyone here sitting in this building right now that is not in unity with Yahweh 100%. This is great to see. It took many years, but it's there. I've got to use some of these scriptures. I left off with in Psalms 110, 110 and verse 1 through 7. Does anyone remember what that says? You probably do. I'm probably the only one that's forgotten. Turn over to 110. Remember Genesis 1:26. That's where it started. I'm going to make man in my image and mankind in my image. And that includes the holy women of Nu, not just men. My book of Yahweh, it's really used. The press room's going to fix this after the feast. 110, where it says, you're going to prove Yahweh or Yeshua, our attorney, is proving that his house is in unity. They're going to bring forth the book of Yahweh. That's it. I about tore mine up, but that's it. I've got it marked up, and this is about the seventh book, I think, that I went through. But notice verse 1 too. Yahweh said to my ruler, that speaking of Yeshua Messiah, set at my right hand. Set at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. Now this is Yahweh speaking. Yahweh said to my ruler and king, set at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. Well, that's where he's going to stay, and you're not going to see Yeshua until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of Yahweh. You'll never see him. That's salvation, by the way. Yeshua's name means salvation. My name means unity between the two of us. You get that? We go hand in hand. Yahweh will send the rod of your strength, the rod of your strength. Now, the average Christian is not going to know this. It's like I keep telling the Gematria team. you know, they're not going to know what 1074 means. You're going to have to repeat it after every time you give it. 828, you got to repeat it. You give it, then you tell them. That's Israel's birthday. That's Israel's tag number. That's Israel's address. Yahweh put so much in here you can't deny it. And it's all in the book of Yahweh. And we're all in unity in wanting to spread this truth throughout the world. Well, Yahweh will send the rod of your strength. The rod of your strength is that righteous scepter. A scepter of righteousness shown in Hebrews, the first chapter. Hebrews, the first chapter. But it shows to be held by Yada, he who wants to learn by experience. Let's go take that land down there that belongs to them, because under that land is a gob of oil. Well, here's another one sitting over here on this side that wants it too. Well, this is showing the greed that you see in what Yada is bringing forth, and he's the one that holds the scepter and will hold that scepter. He sits on 7 hills now, as I've proven, the 7 hills of Rome. Yada. This is, and he has his hand on the neck of every enemy. They can't get out of it. And it's being brought forth by chapter 13 of Revelation, who says, let us be like the first beast. Well, this is the global order that they're trying to bring back in, and they're trying to say part of this global order is Syria, and it's to be given to Israel. Now, this is what they're saying now, because Israel is our number one ally. Turkey was an ally too. We got a lot of allies. They're like a bad bride. They turn on their husbands, and they want to take over the kingdom. Yahweh will send the rod of your strength. This is the laws of Yahweh. There's no religion on earth that is preaching the laws of Yahweh except the House of Yahweh. That's the only one. No one else is teaching the laws of Yahweh today except us. And that's what he's saying to you right here. The strength is shown in Malachi 4 verse 5, the laws and the prophecies. And Yeshua said, if you will believe this, this is the strength of Yahweh, the laws and the prophecies. Your people, verse 3, will have proved themselves before to be in unity. To be in unity with Yahweh, Yeshua, and the house. The time is up. Yeah, I know. The job for us is already set. It's already prophesied, just like the nuclear bomb was prophesied. The nuclear bomb is here. Our job is set before us. Now, Yahweh is guiding this thing, and if you noticed all the work that's been done by Yahweh through his house, if you just go back over it and look, I know Shaul would be glad to show you all the work that we've done in that press room. The books, the monthly letters, the newsletters that's brought you here and trained you, the classes that's going almost every night anymore. The unity that comes here is taught here, and it's put to experience where you actually you can get your hands on it and you learn, and then there's somebody there that's ready to correct you. Don't fight against correction. If you fight against correction, you become yada. You become Hillel. You become like all the different leaders that brought forth the kingdoms and came down to 4 great kingdoms right now called the quartet. And the quartet, of course, is fighting against each other. They're all wanting the same thing. They're greedy, and they're wanting the same thing. And they're building up bombs to where they can tell you, get out of my face, get off of my land, get off of your land, I want it too. This is the attitude. Well, of course, Yada has it tied up, and he said, no, be like the first beast, don't hurt the oil, give everything to us, and we'll dish it out as we want to in this new global order. We've got all the arrangements made. It's a long-range plan that we're bringing forth, and once we get it made, we'll dish you out your fair share. And they're saying, well, we don't trust you. We saw what you did here. We saw what you did there. And they put it out now. They're putting it out on the air. Russia is putting plenty of it out. But then if you go to the other channels, you'll see that the United States and all the other countries, they're all fighting against Russia, China, and so forth. So it's all one big battle. That's Yada. That's Yada. Ignorantly possessing, ignorantly learning by experience. No consider your fellow man, the other nation. Don't forget the assembling of yourselves together, as the manner of some is, where you learn to consider one another. Now this you're learning right now. Soon you'll be ruling, that is, you'll be ruling like Yahweh. You'll be ruling the kingdoms. All of this, Hillel said, has been given to me. I can give it to whom I will. Well, Yahweh says, no, you're going to fall. Your way is going to fall. It's going to end with nuclear burning. He set his house up now, training his house to train kingdoms. Kingdoms in this universe. In the universe, but also here on earth. I've got that blown up where I could show it today, but I didn't get to that either. But that word means universe, and it did include everyone. But then when sin started, there was a separation. So coming down through history with that word, it came to push out anyone who was the called out ones of Yahweh. It stopped including them. Now this is what Strong shows. It shows it means universe, and at one time it meant so and so, but then it came down to the fact that those are not our people anymore. So it ruled out the ecclesia. That the Hebrew word there means the called out ones. So it ruled out the called out ones being a part of their universe. How neat. Well, we don't say their names either. They don't say the name of Yahweh anymore. They don't use it. It don't come out of their mouth. In fact, they'll kill you. They have laws that take care of people who use the name Yahweh. But Yeshua said, well, you can't touch this one. Yahweh says you can't touch this one anymore. The gates of hell cannot prevail against this. That means a protection. In Zechariah 9, I'm going to encamp about my house. They can't come in and out like they did before. They can't kill my people, my prophets, or persecute my prophet anymore. This message is going to go out from me now, and I'm going to lift myself up, Yahweh said, for all the world to see. Well, what he's doing, he's lifting you up to lift him up. Your frequencies are going to the heavens, to Jupiter, to all the private planets, I'd say, that was owned by gods, built their own. I'd say that there's permits being given in heaven for certain planets to be built, like Jupiter had 4 moons to begin with. Then it went up to 16. And now I think it's up to 22. But they keep building moons as they keep expanding. They had to get permits. If you go to the city in Abelin and start building, there'll be an official come around, they'll put a tag on that frame, stop work order. And they'll stop you. Well, you call the number and they'll say, well, you got to come get a permit before you can build here. And it has to be okay. Well, I found that out. I didn't do any of that before I came to Abelin. When I did that, I found out how it works. And so I had to go and get a permit. I had to go before the city council. They had to give it to their planning crews, and it went through all of that before I could build the House of Yahweh on TNP Lane. Once I got the permit, we went back to work again. But that all took place. and we went back to work again and finished the house. But they shut us down to begin with. After we had part of the frame up or the foundation poured, but that's what you have to do in heaven too. You can't just build a planet. If this was allowed, and Yahweh won't allow it because that's his creation. Yahweh created everything. He can stop anything he wants to, or he can permit anything that he wants to. But he would not allow something to be built wrong, placed in the wrong orbit or the wrong place. It's fully governed like the cities are, like the city of Abelin is right now. You can only build it in a certain way. You can't build it if you get out of line with it. That inspector comes around. Sometimes you're there and sometimes you're not, and he'll put another work order on it. And you call him and get with him, and he'll show you what you're doing wrong. So this is the way that heaven is being run too, which is great. You cannot do what you just want to do out of a spur of a moment, because it's going to affect others around you. That's the lesson we're learning right now here in the house of Yahweh. Praise Yahweh. You can make more friends by saying, how can I help? I want you to be satisfied. These words are great if you really mean them. And that's what you're for. You're to become friends. That's what what Yeshua called his disciples, my friends. I called you friends. He became friends with them. And then he gave them their jobs, and he taught them how to teach, what laws to teach and prophecies to teach and so forth. Yeshua taught his disciples all of that, as I have taught you over the years. And it's here in book form. You can turn somebody had a phone playing, and I came by and I heard myself talking, and I looked around, and here was this phone from last week's sermon, yesterday's sermon, or day before yesterday sermon, playing on their phone. And there was my picture and everything, like a TV screen. But this is on a telephone. Well, it's going out. So a person, I said, could a person, if they have a phone, say in Russia, do this? They said, yeah. What do you have to do? Just tune in Facebook or Google, YisraelSays.com. There's several different ways of doing it. You can ask any question, and you'll see that I already tell them in advance. We answer all scriptural questions. We're the only ones on the face of the earth that can do that. I went a little bit over, but they said I could, and I got permission before I did this. Now, it's not going to wreck any planets. So, they said we got plenty of time from here till this evening. If you can, bring your pencil and paper. I've got some things I want you to write down and work on between now and Passover. Passover is going to be critical. The wars are already started. You can see how they're building. The third part of the people are going to be killed over that fourth part of the earth. Remember, in this 3.5 years, but the 3.5 years is cut short. It's going to be cut short because it's going to get so bad that you would be involved in it too. Yahweh don't intend for you to be involved in this great nuclear burning. Yahweh bless you. Yahweh bless your understanding. And I'll turn the services back to the next leader. I love you.